So here's in this video, I want to clean up this Excel file or the CSV file and get it ready for joining to my tracked boundary data. So we can already see that it has a GOID column, but there's some numbers in front of it. I can see where the 35 being the New Mexico state code, and it has this 14 0000 US number in front of it, so we might clean that up to be able to start working with this. So maybe we'll start with that. So I'm going to insert a column here, and let's just well, instead of adding a column, how about I just select this column and do a search and destroy, or a find and replace as it's called. And that's Control H, by the way. And I want to find the 1, 4, and how many zeros is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a US, and replace it with nothing and replace all. So now I get all 35s in there. So now that number is going to match what I have in my attribute table for my census tract shapefile. Okay, the name column isn't as important to me, but it does tell me the tract number and what county it's in, so I might be able to use that for some labeling or something. Now I want to look at the data itself. I do want total population. I'm not that concerned with margin of error in this example, so maybe I want to delete that. So margin of error is not as important right now, and this percent total of population, it looks like it's all X's and doesn't have any data there anyway, so maybe I don't want that for the total population because, well, there's no percentage of total for the total, it's all 100. And then the margin of error for that. So maybe I want to get rid of all the percentages and all the margins of error just to tidy this whole thing up. So while that's going to be a little difficult, I'm going to approach it in a slightly different way than we've used before. So I'm going to add or insert a row above it, and I'm going to calculate every column basically with an identifier, really. One of the ways that you can do that is by performing a search. So if I do an equals search and I search for, let's say, margin with in quotes, double quotes. So if I do that and I search it in A3, cell A3, let's see what that does. That actually gives me an error. If I go over the next few cells, I can see that it gives me a 1 when it finds that and an error when it doesn't. Okay, so a nice way to make that a little easier to read is popping in an is error qualifier in there. So right, if I put is error, or ISERR, in front of my search in parentheses, let's see what that does. Gives me a true. Let's follow that through and see what we get. It just makes it true or false. So in this case, I could use an if statement to search more than one thing. So I wanted to search margin as well as percent. So let's try that. So in front of the if, I'll put an if statement in front of the is an error. So now I'm searching. So I'm testing if my search produces an error or not. And if it if it's true, then it doesn't have the word margin in it. If that's the case, so value if true, I'm going to do another is error on a search for the word percent. In A3, right? So what that does is looks for an error searching for margin. If that is an error, that means there's no margin in that cell. And if that's the case, then I'm going to check and see if there's the word percent in that cell. And if that's true, if there's an error for that, that means, well, I don't know what that means. I'll just make that a 0. And well, I need an if statement in front of that. So that's my value for the second if statement. I'll make it a 0. And if indeed it is true that it's an error, that means there's no percent in the word, and I'll make it a 1. And then end the if statement. Now, what do I do if if it doesn't have, if indeed the error is false? That means there's no error. That means it found something in it, and so I'll just make it a 0 again. So there's the if statement. Make sure I got all my parentheses, counting all my parentheses. I think I need one more parenthesis here. So I need one for the if, yeah, one more parentheses. Oh, right. I need to close the parentheses here and not out on the outside. Oops, another error. Let's see. So if there is an error when I search for the word margin in A3, then it doesn't have the word margin in it. And so I'm going to jump to if that's true, value of true, then I look for an error when I search for the word percent. If that is true, then I don't know how that got in there. So if that is true, then I put a 0, meaning that there indeed is no word percent or margin in that. Otherwise, it's going to be a 1. And that would be the outside of my if statement. And then my value if false, that means if there is the word margin in there, I'll put a 0. Or how about a 1? So the value of false will be a 1 in case I actually have the word margin or percent in. So anytime I have the word margin, the value will be a 1, and anytime, and as well as the word percent. So margin 1, percent 1. So the search function looks for a word, gives back an error, If it doesn't find that word, the is error allows me to turn that to a true or a false, and using my if statements and just giving it a 0 or a 1. 1 if it does find the words I'm looking for, 0 if it does not. Okay, why would I do that? Well, the main reason is now I can do a search. So I can highlight this column and do a control F or find all the values of 1 and just find all. And I'm going to highlight the first one, shift click the last one, and oops, let me close that. I need to fill that to the right. I only filled it to a certain value and I stopped. So I'm going to highlight the first cell and then click on the row and then just hit a control R. And that fills it all the way across. And now I can do a control F and look for the word 1, find them all. And now it's taking a little bit more time, so that means it's, there we go, maybe move that up. There, I found quite a few, so I'm just gonna scroll down to the bottom, hold the shift key, select the last one, 16,000 of them all, and close it. Didn't look like that worked at first, so let's try it again here. Oh, let me look in the options, and I don't want to look in the formula, I want to look in the values here and find all. That should be, it's still chugging away here, looking through every cell in that row. Found even more in this case. Maybe I yeah, definitely not what I was looking for. Why did I do that? Let me scroll back up. Might not have had this row selected. Try it again. Okay, I want to find 1 in the values, search by rows. There we go, 348. That's more like it. I just didn't have that cell selected, all this, just that row selected. Sorry about that. So highlighting the first cell and shift clicking the last. There we go. And close. Okay, so now I have all the cells with 1s in them in that row. And a right click and a delete allows me to delete the entire column that those cells are on. It may take a minute to delete all those. There we go. So I've knocked the columns down substantially, to where I just have the estimates that I need. Make these a little smaller. Okay, so now I just have good population estimate data rather than, there's a couple at the end here that I want to get rid of. These cells are more of a summary, so maybe I don't want to. Wow, that's a nice value, total population summary indicators, child dependency ratio. So I'm not really interested in getting all those, and there's a bunch of X's here, so maybe my last column would be DB here. There's a fair about found the last row of last column with X's, it looks like, in it. So I'm going to just highlight those and just delete them all to the right. Now there's let me just delete those. Now there's another problem, and that is this column and all the zeros afterwards are I need to delete those because those zeros are still there. So I think I just need to highlight that first row there, or first cell there, and hit a Control Shift and right arrow, and it selects them all. I'll just hit delete on the keyboard, and that clears those cells. So yeah, I have no values in that column now. Okay. So now it's almost totally cleaned up, except for the fact that I have 3 header rows now. I probably don't need these other 2. The metadata actually takes care of what these values are. So I'm just going to delete the identifying rows, my formula where I identified each column that I needed to delete. Now that I've deleted it, I can take out these rows. Now I just need to deal with the GUID. Don't need to worry about the name. The only other thing, this is almost mappable except for the fact that all the columns, or all the header cells in there have an S0101 underscore prefix, and that kind of puts all the header rows that over 10 characters. So maybe I just want to search and destroy one more time and look for an S0101 underscore and replace that with nothing. And now I've cleared those out. So now this is ready for joining to my data.